Reminder to sign into Doc if you haven't already. And Dan, were you going to put anything on there about offline build packages this week? I know we don't have Forrest and Ryan this time because they have a conflict, but might be worth bringing up.
Yeah.
Put it on there. Let's call that asset caching. Should we get started? Cool. First thing is new faces. Definitely don't see any new faces this time. Release planning and updates.
No major updates. We're still planning to ship a patch of the live cycle when we're done moving the automation to GitHub Actions. So same as last week.
Cool. Anything on the pack side, Javier?
Similar over here. We're not planning to start focusing on feature complete until next week. So we'll have more of an update there next week.
Cool. Let's do our weekly outstanding RFC review. Give me 1 second to share my screen. So first thing is new PR add builder to distributions pack. Anything actionable on this one to talk about right now? Is this on the list? Yes, this is on the list. So, but we don't have David here. Is that right? So should this be on the list this time to chat about?
I thought when I was signing in, I saw that David was the one adding it to the list. So
maybe he just
sure.
lost connection. Move on then. RFC lifecycle experimental API mode. This is a new experimental API thing from Terrence.
Yeah, he's out today.
So wait till next time on this one.
Yeah, probably.
Cool. Build run image configs must contain env.path. No, Micah. A lot of people on vacation and stuff. Anybody have any status on this one? Should just move on. Cool. I can reach out to them. Distribution team.
I was waiting on some small changes for Terrence, but nothing on waiting on me, but nothing actionable.
Sounds good. I think we got some approvals. Just waiting for Terrence there. Application mixins.
Yeah, just FYI, I'm not paying a lot of attention to this one. I know there's some comments, but I probably haven't addressed them. Waiting for the mixin. I'm waiting for the mixin stuff from Stackpacks to kind of sort out, and then I'll come back to this one.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's definitely agree. We should focus on Stackpacks first. Is this on the Stackpacks on the agenda this time? Yes, it is. Awesome. Yep. So we'll talk about that. And then Buildpacks should be able to provide default process types for app. This is super interesting. There's a lot of good discussion about this one. I think, Natalie, we were going to chat about it at some point, just based on the feedback we got in Slack. Anything actionable for this group right now? Or anything you're looking for? Cool.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I guess if people have opinions about that, please put them in the thing because get as much feedback as possible on what we should do there. Relax mixing contract. This is an FCP, and is it the 17th yet? Nope, that's tomorrow, so that'll go on tomorrow. Sub-team maintainer creates repo issues. Where are we with this one?
That's just waiting for votes. Has to.
Got it. Sounds good. Take a look. RFC, that's draft, that's draft. Experimental features is next. Is Terrence's an alternative to this one?
Yeah, he took this over, and I think this is done. I can't vote on it because I'm the author, but it's actually Terrence who's the author. So I think it might be waiting for him to vote on it.
I haven't voted on this either yet.
Oh, okay.
Has this changed a lot? Because I know he put up the new experimental APIs, but I thought this was about pack features. I feel like I haven't.
Yeah.
If this changed
Yeah,
a lot, I haven't looked at it since it changed.
Yeah, they're two different things. I think the changes were largely around like how it's messaged, sort of, or like how a user knows that something's experimental, and how we deprecate it or kill things. You know.
Cool. Anything actionable right now? Just
no.
Terrence and I should take a look. Cool. Draft for mixins and offline build packages RFC. This one is on the list today. Yeah, asset caching. So we won't talk about it right now. So let's dive into our first RFC with stack build packs. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, let's see. The first thing on the list is a question about creator dropping privileges, but I think Jesse, I'll just let Jesse talk about it.
Yeah, so I guess right now creator drops privileges pretty much instantly, and it drops them permanently. So for creator to be able to work with stack build packs, we'll need to be able to elevate back up for the stack build pack execution as root, and then drop permissions again for the remainder of the creator cycle. So I just wanted to make sure that sounded reasonable.
I have a question about creator and stack packs in general, because after detect, you also want to kick off a run of the stack build packs on the run image before you export. So can you actually use creator at all, which does them in a single process?
That's what I was going to suggest also. Does creator make sense for these more complicated multi-image workflows? Or can you tell people to just run the normal workflow?
It's useful for stack build packs that only target the build phase. But yeah, if it's a stack pack that has to run on the run image, then yeah, I'm not sure that creator makes sense in that case. So maybe we just keep it out of creator completely.
We don't have to make a decision about what it ends up being eventually, right? We could just keep it out of creator for the first, until we get a working workflow with the full thing, and then come back and add it to creator later if we find that there's people want it there, or there's a use case for it.
Does that mean platforms like Pack would need to know in advance to not call creator in the case that it has stack packs?
Yeah,
Give me
builder. Bring up like Tecton, right, where you select which one of the two tasks you want to execute. Now it becomes a very difficult choice to understand when you should be using certain optimizations and when you shouldn't. So restricting stack packs from working on the creator workflow seems pretty, non-ideal for very specific use cases. But I do agree that maybe just for getting it out the door, getting some sort of feeler for the feature as a whole, it sounds like a good idea to have it not be in creator on the initial pass.
For Tecton, this is going to get way more complicated, right? Like the purpose of creator is that it's a one shot go. You can drop it into an existing template if you want to. It's like very simple to set up. But then here you have to have multiple containers no matter what. And so if we added stack pack support to the creator Tecton workflow, would that be a third template that's like in between the two templates, right? I wonder if to me, it's almost, is it actually increased complexity for Tecton if, we try to add support there? Because we definitely need multiple containers for the build.
Doesn't this
right?
make pack kind of weird too? Like as soon as you trust a builder, now stack packs won't work. At least that's currently how it's coded, right? Like when it's trusted, it
Yeah,
must
especially because
trigger.
this can be done dynamically in the build plan, right? Deciding whether you're going to install and mix in. You need to make the decision about whether you're running in one container or multiple up front. So basically, it's just if you have stack packs at all, you'd never use the creator. So we've sort of lost that optimization, and like maybe that's worth it for the feature, but it's a trade-off.
As long as I get that it might be tricky to find a way to know if you're going to need stack packs ahead of time, but if there's a reasonable way to rule out stack packs early on in the build, then having a trusted builder still go through the whole process to do a build doesn't seem like a terrible thing, right? It's a little bit slower, but it's not so bad, right? What are the advantages of creator and pack again? How much faster is it? Or
It's
is that the main thing?
significantly faster. Yeah.
Couple seconds, which matters for a fast build.
It doesn't matter for a build where you're installing operating system packages, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Generally not a fast build.
We could also have it, not maybe this is different from having a third Tecton template, but it could, after the creator is done, check if stack packs ran and then run a second container for extend. And it would be kind of like, it would still be like a composite thing because it would extend and export rather than just extend. But we could probably have it be 2 phases if we want that optimization still.
In Tecton, that'd be tricky to do the if, right? Because that.
Right. Yeah, I'm saying just strictly for optimizing pack.
For pack, sorry, that's true.
It's weird. Sometimes you run creator, but you don't actually get an image. It like bails out before export, and then you have to know to come back and run export later.
I feel like I missed something. Why does the use of creator obviate the ability to use stack packs?
So stack packs, some of them need to run on the run image, which has to be in a different container because it's based off a different image, and the output of them running needs to be consumed by the exporter. So instead of running through all the phases in a single container, you need to take the outputs of processes that have to run in 2 different containers and feed them into the same exporter.
I don't know if this is worth bringing up, but we could challenge that. We could use the same container and just, the Conoco does this when you do a Conoco Dockerfile build. Nuke everything in the container, load the run image layers into it dynamically, and then do the run image build all in one thing. That's technically possible. It just is really messy.
In the pack case, you could have creator run the container, the run image container itself, because it has access to the Docker daemon, but it wouldn't work in like a Tecton.
No,
It has that, and it's access to the Docker daemon sometimes.
Yeah, if you're doing a daemon build, it has access to the Docker daemon.
It seems pretty gross, though.
Yeah, it does.
But I'm saying that the
Yeah.
creator could literally delete the whole file system, right? Keep itself in memory and download the run image layers and splat them out on the file system manually, and then do the build without still in that same creator container after the build finishes. Because after
And
the
then it
initial,
needs to pull in all the old file system stuff from the build image, though.
from the build image.
I guess as long as it has the layers volume, it's fine.
Yeah.
It has to delete. It has to make sure not to disrupt the layers or app, but it could do that.
Just delete everything else. That's what Conoco does when you do a Conoco Dockerfile build. That's how it's an image that still does a Dockerfile build of an image. So it's possible. It's just really crazy kind of. The disadvantage there is that we couldn't run it in parallel.
Well, the problem I've been thinking about the parallel thing too. That's going to get really weird in terms of like output, you
Just-
know?
Just have to defer the run image output so it doesn't show up until the build part finishes. I mean, you buffer it. Pack
Yeah,
file. I do this a bunch in pack file. I have a bunch of code for it if you want.
Okay.
Build the layers in
But
parallel.
yeah, in any case, I kind of like that, doing the Kaneko style thing of wipe and load. And we don't have to do it like first iteration, but I think that, I mean, given what creator is meant to be, that actually sounds pretty appropriate.
It'd be kind of nice if creator itself was a scratch image like Kaneko and pulled the original build image as well. Like if we're going to go that far, maybe we take it even further so that it just takes in a tag to pull in.
Then we don't get good caching on the build image though, because there's no place to put it temporarily. The big disadvantage here is that now you have to download the layers on every build, right? Probably remotely.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we did some investigation on some of this too with Kaneko recently. It is significant.
Now, could you do like a Kaneko, some hybrid Kaneko thing where locally when you're running creator and pack in the Docker daemon, because it can access the Docker daemon, it loads the uncompressed layers through the Docker daemon and into the thing, so you can use your Docker daemon cache with the, there's a whole bunch of stuff we could look into.
How about, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff. How about we call out in the RFC that we're not going to define how this works for creator yet, and then we do a whole separate creator RFC to support stack packs. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. I guess it's probably good if it goes through RFC process, but it could just be figuring out what the best way to do it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's more like just make sure it works with the RFC. It's like implementation of the same RFC, but yeah. I think we should definitely defer. Yeah.
It's just the only problem I have with that is I think we probably need to do something to make something like pack fail if there are stack packs, because if you have a trusted builder, or if it's untrusted and you trust it, it will still build, but it will not build the same thing anymore, right? Because it's gonna have the stack packs.
In the short term, we could have it check if there are stack packs like on the stack image, right?
And that's what I'm suggesting. Yeah, if we're gonna make creator, if we're gonna dump out a creator, I kind of feel like we need a fail fast scenario here.
Is it a fail though? You could just fall back on the multiple images. Like you don't have to use creator.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
the
that's
safer
fine, too.
one, the
Yeah.
less trust is the separate container. So we always have that as a fallback.
Yeah.
I worry about if a stack author puts a stack pack in their stack image, like it's going to pose an interesting question for stack authors, where suddenly putting a stack pack in their image makes every build less performant, right? Because the trusted build workflow no longer works, and that's the default workflow for pack. If you're using, one of the Cloud Foundry, Heroku, Google builders, right, is use the trusted workflow. And so that would make me hesitant to add stack packs to my builder because it would slow down all my pack builds. And so I'd almost rather it try and fail, if that makes sense. Like if you're using a trusted builder workflow and you try to do a package installation, you get some message that says, hey, you got to slow down your builder and use this other way of doing it if you want to. Wouldn't be great. It's like definitely hurts the UX for end users, but it hurts the UX for users either, insidiously and persistently, right, where everything slows down on a release in one direction, or it hurts the UX with a sudden, oh yeah, I gotta run it the slow way if I want to do this kind of more complicated thing.
Maybe in pack right now you have to just explicitly opt in, like the pack build -- with stack packs.
That could work.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, as far as the release planning for this feature, right? I think we might have discussed it, but it sounds like, for one, like having a creator seems to be even more important, as you explained it, Stephen, where the stack author probably wouldn't want to include some of these if we're going to be slowing down the build process by nature. So I think that elevates the need for the creator work to be done. And then on the other side, if we're having a lot of stuff that we're really just wanting to implement for experimental purposes, is that kind of the plan for it to be experimental behind the scenes and then people opt in to these functionalities?
I think we should take the rollout of this feature in general very slowly because it's so complicated and we need to get a lot of feedback on it, So I don't think, I don't want to defer the creator thing until we say it's ready to go. Everybody in the world goes use stack packs. It just seems like getting it out getting one working workflow that covers all parts of the RFC out for untrusted builders first and releasing that and then getting feedback on it. Is experimental with a flag you have to pass that says use stack packs and an untrusted builder when it runs. Then getting feedback on that and then coming around, adding create builder and the 20 other things I'm sure we didn't think about, right? And then releasing it all together is good. And I think that's going to happen over a long enough period of time that it's, by the time we say everybody in the world use stack packs, we'll have time to address it, to the RFCs and all that stuff. I don't know. Does that seem reasonable?
I'm kind of like, with that, I was just concerned that it would turn into the Cloud Foundry app build pack, which is never officially supported, even though it's kind of used in many scenarios.
That was never officially supported because it wasn't supportable, really, right?
Yeah, because it could break the ABI guarantees. But like, it kind of to me seems like it's the same thing. Like, here is this tool that you can use to, not quite a sledgehammer, you can use to download your packages, but like.
So it wasn't an ABI issue. That was like just most packages you install are going to get installed to different paths that just won't work. And so like 50% of things fail in crazy or silent ways, right? It wasn't a thing we could ever safely say is usable in production, right? And that's why, even though we finished it really quickly, we didn't want to, say that this is something people should use if they really could avoid it. In this case, this is like a fully supported, it's there's no danger to using it at all, right? It's completely safe, and that's why there's so much complexity in the process of getting it out there. And so once it's usable, like, people should really start to use it, right? If that makes sense. And then once we say it's ready to go, then like, we can, it's not hard for us to say, yes, this is an officially supported way of doing things. If that's helpful.
Okay, so we're gonna defer creator. Is there any more on creator before we move forward?
It seemed like Natalie, you were saying something, but you're muted.
Oh, well, sorry, I don't know if this is useful, but I just wanted to point out that the Paketo, Heroku, Google Builders, all of those are trusted by default. So if we're doing something that, is like expecting the user to explicitly opt in, we should just keep that in mind, because if we ever put stack packs on those builders, then it'll be a broken by default workflow.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say that I think, at least in the experimental phase, I agree with Stephen that, like, if you have stack packs and you are passing whatever experimental flag is required to run them, and it's a trusted builder, we stop. We can go over that, but I think at a minimum, we would do something like that in the experimental phase.
I mean, I think, like, in order to use, maybe for the experimental phase, in order to use stack packs at all, you have to pass -- experimental - use - stack packs, right? And then
which is almost the same as passing a -- untrust builder. Like, untrust builder just follows the non. How can we do that? Like, how can you opt into using a specific build pack? I guess we can manually do that in pack and like include it or not include it in the list of build packs we provide to lifecycle. So, like,
stack packs are a pretty specific feature. Like, they require pack to do some really different stuff, if that makes sense, anyways. And so it shouldn't be too hard for us to adjust the logic there, right?
Sure.
Unless I misunderstood. Cool. Anything else on creator?
I do have a question about where we are right now and how this is being developed. So I'm assuming there's changes being made to lifecycle. Are changes also concurrently being made to pack to test it out, or are there different methods?
No. No. So and also the changes are being made in a branch. We're not putting anything in master until the RFC is done. This is mostly just to validate what we're saying and then to see if we can uncover stuff that we didn't anticipate.
Yeah, like creator not working.
Yeah. Jesse, you want to, like, Jesse's been running lifecycle manually. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a lifecycle branch where, we got custom builders with some stack packs testing kind of the build plans and how they interact and detect phases and ordering and writing a bunch of tests around that stuff as well. It's currently kind of where we're at. I think we're to the point now where I think it's probably on Joe's list, but we're going to do some like cache restore stuff next. But we've got detect phase and build phase sort of doing what we think they're supposed to be doing. And now we'll get to the part restoring, caching, and then exporting will kind of be so we haven't even got to the point where we're creating the extended run image at this point, but we're getting there.
Yeah, and Jesse's added some acceptance tests, which has been pretty helpful in validating it, but nothing in pack yet.
Right. So yeah, I guess that answers my question. It's just mostly through testing that we've dealt with a lot of this. Cool.
Yeah. I was going to suggest that we do some breakout time tomorrow to talk about the extend phase. And then actually, I think very related to extend is the rebase stuff. We're just going to, if we talk about that here, we're not going to talk about anything else. So unless anybody objects, I'll put that on the schedule for tomorrow. There is one thing, I don't want to talk about it too long, but I think Jesse's going to probably run into this sooner than later, is an open question about how the lifecycle knows if a stack is already providing a mixin. So the RFC I updated with the proposal for mixins in the build plan. And I think we understand how that'll get sorted out within lifecycle. But the missing piece is, how detector factors in that the stack already has a mixin. So I think there's two possibilities. One is that it's like a generic input from the platform. Like the platform is like, don't worry about where these came from. These are provided mixins. Or the alternative is detector is sort of aware of where to look for the stack metadata to see what mixins are already provided. So I guess it's a question of if detector is aware of the stack mixins or still remains like generic and like the build plan mixins.
It should be aware, but it can't read the label where they are right now. We should just
we'd have to
throw them in stack toml because we already have a stack toml. It seems like a reasonable place for it to me.
We also have the precedence of having the stack ID set in the environment of the stack image. I wonder if having this mixin set in the environment of the stack image makes sense or not. I kind of think you said in the past we're not actually sure if we want to expose that list to Buildpacks anyways. So stack toml, maybe that may be the right answer. I just wanted to.
Yeah. So in both of those, it sounds like you're in favor of detector being aware of the stack mixins and going in and getting them, rather than being totally ignorant and just there's some other build plan that came from somewhere. Would you agree with that?
Oh, you're saying would it make sense to filter the build plan before it gets to detector? Like
not filter, but like detector would start with a list of provided mixins, and like you can think of it like it wouldn't care where they came from. It's just like maybe the platform, maybe there's some other mechanism that ran before lifecycle that enhanced the stack. Like who cares, right? Like, would you prefer that it's just a generic provides mixin equals true, or the other two options like you were describing with an environment variable or stack toml? Like that's the kind of thing I'm trying to figure out.
You're saying should we wrap the stack into this more generic mixin contract so that the thing that the detector is getting is a build plan that's coming from the stack, as opposed to, but then there's the question of, well, what generates that build plan that's coming from the stack? And then just invents another concept that looks like detector that says before detector. So I would say that sounds like great refactoring in the future when we have a need for that other thing.
Okay.
But until then, probably just give it to detector. It's my guess.
All right, cool. We'll put.
I think it does raise a question about the build plan, something we're going to have to do differently from mixins that don't make them totally generic provides requires. in that right now, if a build pack provides something and it is not required, that's not a passing configuration of the build plan. I think this is getting back to like the build mix-ins any. Because to describe in the build plan that you can provide more than one mix-in,
Yeah.
if it isn't any, like maybe we have a nice mechanism for any, but for anything besides, like maybe we have a special case for any, but for anything besides that, you need to create a set of provides or provides. It's like the combinatorial explosion of all of the mix-ins you could provide and or not provide. I wonder if we just want to relax that requirement for mix-ins or evaluate the contract differently.
Yeah, I'd say I'm comfortable with the idea that provides don't have to be met. Definitely for static mix-ins, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. But potentially for, I don't know.
No, I think
something worth.
Yeah, the static ones, I think I know how to deal with that. For the dynamic ones, that should be fine. Like I don't see a stack pack adding provides if they're not actually required. Like that seems fine. It's really just the static ones, and we can handle those separately.
Wouldn't it always be providing whatever it can provide?
Yeah. But do we want to?
No, I don't think we need that. Like that.
Like
I
I think
of the apt build pack would, like, if you're going to provide something generically or like any, you're going to do it statically. I don't see a stack pack saying I provide anything dynamically. That seems wrong to me, right? Like if it's doing it dynamically, it needs to be explicit about what it's providing based on what was required or some list that it grabbed from a URL or something. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I didn't think we were using the static list in Buildpack TOML sort of as a source of truth during detect. I thought we were using the build plan during detect. Like maybe this is another topic for the deep dive.
But yeah, maybe it is. It's both, right? Like I thought we were saying that we wanted to, and that's what I was getting at is like detector gets the list of stack provided mix-ins and uses that as part of its like resolution for resolving the build plan.
The stack packs can't dynamically output mix-ins they provide. Is that right? They're predefined in Buildpack TOML.
So
do we make a decision?
What I added to the RFC is it can do both. But I could totally see removing the dynamic provides of mix-ins. I don't actually have a use case for that.
I thought a while ago we said that it's too hard to validate things. If the mix-in list is determined dynamically, you have to start the build first. Like that was a McNew, was that something you rose? And so if we keep that static, then we could say, yes, that we are going to relax this. It's like they're syncs sort of for those requirements that allow the requirements to pass. But on the provider side, you don't have to meet those mix-ins because they're statically defined. And then if no mix-ins match on the provider side, then we choose not to run the stack pack, which is just like optional, right? It like feels very similar to what optional means for the other build packs. So I think that all works out well. You could even do it dynamically, but I thought we had said we didn't want to do it dynamically. We can talk about that in the deep dive. There's actually a problem. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. Go ahead.
There's okay with that. I sort of, when it was the two mechanisms, it was bothering me, and I wanted the static to be a pre-validation, but then dynamic to be the source of truth during detect. But if we don't have dynamic provides, I'm okay using the static in the actual detection. It's the combination of the two that I feel like isn't clean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing I was thinking was like, you have for the apt build pack, you have statically, you say you provide anything, and then either a build pack or an application requires a package or a mix-in, FFmpeg or whatever. And something would put a provides in the build plan.
No.
Whether
So just any gets put in the build plan, right?
okay, I mean
Then-
you could, but yeah, I mean I guess that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking that during detect you would refine the any down to only what was actually required.
But you can't.
That's what the
'cause-
requirements do.
Right. It's a declarative thing that runs in parallel, right? Not
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So what I really mean is by the time it gets to build, it's just a set, like you're not getting any in build. Okay, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But we can
We're
do
on the
that.
same page. Yeah.
As opposed, yeah.
Yeah.
I have two problems. One is this list of mixins we're going to pass, two unrelated problems actually. This list of mixins we're going to pass into the detector will need to include runtime mixins that aren't available on the build image as well. And so we can't statically bake the run image mixins into the build image because we've said in the past that they could change for a given build image in the future. And so I don't think we have a canonical source of mixins.
This is why stack toml is good, because it actually only exists on a builder. It's not baked into the build image. And when you create a builder, you have a build and a run image, and you can put all the mixins in the file.
Builder has a dynamic link to the run image, and the run image can change over time to add more mixins. Builder doesn't have a specific run image reference.
I think when you create the builder, that's a time we validate mixins, that we validate the two images even work together. And I think if you're adding mixins to the run image after that, dynamically, you should be recreating the builder anyways, because you don't know
I think we
that
should.
this is a valid set.
I think we should defer all this until tomorrow so we can get to some other topics. I just wanted to talk about those couple things because I knew it might block us because we were important.
That's the next problem I was going to get to. Is we had another thing we were going to chat about tomorrow, which is there's some big disagreements in offline build packages where some folks on the Cloud Foundry side who work on Buildpacks feel strongly like a separate image with all the dependencies in it is be very difficult to manage release process wise. I wanted to make sure that Emily and Ben, especially, you could talk to them. I'd suggest we not have we do the stack pack conversation tomorrow because I think there's more global interest in that. But we need to make sure we reschedule that because I think people had talked about using the Thursday meeting to talk about that. Just logistical point. I guess, Dan, would you be okay reaching out to folks and scheduling a separate thing for offline build packages so we have the time tomorrow to do stack packs?
Yep, definitely.
Cool. So we should be good to do the deep dive tomorrow then on this.
Cool.
Anything else on stack packs? What's the next thing on the list? Builder RFC.
Builder RFC. So I put this up yesterday. I don't know if people got a chance to look at it or not, but Emily, thank you for reviewing it, and Joe also. I just had like a few questions I wanted to discuss. Emily brought up most of them actually in her review, so that was great. First of all, I think that was mentioned already in the discussion, the issue on spec, is where people kind of had, whether people had strong opinions on where a specification for builders should live, whether it should be an extension spec. I kind of thought that to some degree, I wasn't considering versioning in this, but at the very least, like it seemed very much tied to the distribution spec. So definitely I would want it to, at least show up there. But whether it should have its standalone extension spec or not. Just wanted to, I guess, open it to the floor and see what people thought.
Yeah, being an extension doesn't mean it would never be in core either, but kind of in favor of it being an extension at first, at least.
So is the long-term hope for Builder being an extension, is it that builders, I know in the past, builders were kind of intended to go away to some degree, potentially. Are we still on that camp, or are we kind of putting it in extension to hopefully promote it into one of the official specs?
I don't see builders as something that go away completely because they're useful in that like Tecton-like context. You want an image that does a build pack build, right? And in any case where you want an image that does a build pack build, right? Then we have this great solution for it that's all pre-baked and can do it for you. I think the discussion there was more about should builders be the primary way people do build pack builds with something like the pack CLI, given that they are restricted in a sense that their build pack versions are locked in, or should the pack CLI migrate to a model that's doesn't have baked in builders or build packs, and kind of builders become a little more of maybe something that doesn't exist in pack, or maybe something that's kind of behind the scenes where really you're pulling the build packs you need, they're running on the build image, and then ended up getting exported in the run image. And I was going to ask if McNew you had any opinions, because you're building a platform that doesn't consume builders and can't consume builders anymore, right?
That was a total surprise for me. So I'm very excited to hear about the K-Pack stuff, because I remembered that it used builders. So
Yeah, so the recent release of K-Pack doesn't consume builders, but still plays a role in builders because it creates what should be spec compliant builders to manage the builds. So it seems like this RFC is useful in that sense because we'd also be trying to adhere to the same spec of what the builders are. I agree. I'm interested in exploring what it looks like to break it down so that users of Pack and perhaps other platforms like K-Pack are not treating builders as their primary entry point. And that's what we're doing on K-Pack now. Users choose build packs or the stack images and then provide an order to create a builder and then utilize that to build a build or build images and builds. That was a roundabout answer, Stephen, but
no, that's good context.
So the definition of the extension section, if I remember correctly, ultimately meant that a platform or any given system would be cloud native build packs compliant if they adhere to the core specs, right? But not the extension specs. And I think maybe that's what ties into the reasoning for the extension. Is that right?
If you made a platform that just ran build pack builds on a build image and exported those images on a run image, seems like you have a soon-to-be compliant platform to me. Right. So that's why I would vote extension personally.
I hadn't realized, I hadn't fully thought through the fact that extension was, I guess, not the core necessarily in that. But so you think people think it should be kind of entirely part of the extension and shouldn't show up in core at all, or should it have mentions in core?
I would vote for entirely separate thing. I also think the core specs should be broken down into 3 different layers of specs, if that makes sense, around a basic API that could even be its own tooling for layer manipulation in the way we do layers, right? And then all these rules about how the environment gets set up and all that stuff. I feel like it's healthy to have more modular, less cross-referential concepts, and so I would support Builder being its own dedicated extension spec that's without saying in the core spec, and then when you're using a builder, these other things apply, right? Just trying to keep it with a nice architectural boundary in the writing.
I wouldn't mind one reference. So we talk about the build environment in the platform spec, which is the build image plus other things, and it's the environment the lifecycle runs in. I think just a pointer to say the builder spec is a way to distribute a complete build environment.
I just meant I meant no cross references in the formal definition. If we want to document anything in the world, in there to help people, I think that's totally okay.
I feel like
that's definitely
no cross references at all is not achievable, but that's a different conversation.
So I guess that I don't know So that leads, I guess, to the second question, because I wasn't quite sure how that would work, but Emily had also brought up versioning concerns, like should there be an API for builders, so we can kind of better enable stable changes to that. Are there currently? I know we just started releasing different version releases and spec. Do we release any APIs for extension currently, or would this be the first? First of all, do people agree that there should be a versioning for builders? But assuming there is.
I definitely agree that there should be, like, heavily, because as we transition to another one, like, we need something to be able to definitively say, oh, we should be parsing it or using it in this other specific newer way or format. I would go further and say that I'd like to maybe ask that we start pushing more towards the OCI media types and fields to leverage those to more explicitly detail, that this is more or less what we should be looking for or at.
What do you mean by the OCI media type fields?
So as part of the OCI spec, I believe there's certain areas that go into different media types and different fields within different parts of the OCI where those media types are then used. So I know we have an OCI, we have a distribution spec essentially that talks about OCI layout, and it's how build packages are distributed. I think once we found that there's an OCI artifacts spec that kind of goes into details about using media types, I think we should kind of latch onto that and then thereby get those media types cataloged in a way where it's recognizable and more thoroughly used within the ecosystem.
I might be misremembering, but I thought a reason we had talked very early on with like Steve Lasker, who was kind of part of that artifacts, group. How should we label our build packages? Should we use different media type for non-run-up artifacts and all that? And I thought the thing we ran into is that when you start doing things that registries, don't think are very normal, you're pushing Docker images, right? When you stop using media types that are really normal, you lose a lot of registry support. That registries start behaving strangely. We already, we're already a little bit restricted with, you need cross-repo blob mounting and some of the more modern registry features. Anything we can do to, kind of push forward and be more compliant with how OCI should work sounds really good. But as long as we're testing on every registry to make sure that it continues to work, because it doesn't seem worth it if suddenly, half the users can't use it.
It was very recently that we started working with the GitHub image registry, for example, right? Because it didn't even support digest references. Somehow I don't imagine that they're going to support custom artifact types. But we could see.
I'd honestly be surprised if they didn't. I think we felt the same way about Microsoft or Windows, how they have a restriction for some of the way that their containers or the images are created, but they themselves, or Azure has an artifacts registry support OCI compliant as well. So
Azure supports that because they're largely driving out the effort. It's things like ECR that are really, further behind in their implementation of the spec when we've kind of looked into them. I definitely, I would be very surprised actually if GitHub registry was super up to date with it. Although I guess they are owned by Microsoft now, right? So maybe.
Yeah, that's why I threw that on there. I was like, yeah, they're all related now.
Forgot about that.
Clearly, their registry is not an ACR, though. Otherwise, our lives would have been easier in the past.
I would just be careful.
That registry left beta, like the GitHub registry left beta like 2 weeks ago. So I wouldn't. It's in public beta now, like as of 2 weeks ago. So it's still fairly fresh.
As long as we're testing against everything, right? Then I totally agree it's the right thing to do. I just worry that it's dropping support just for some nice metadata.
How would that be different than? Well, I guess no. Never mind.
So you version, so the media type, the way I tied it to your question, sorry, is part of the media type is you specify the version as in there as well.
So, okay, so that would be baked into the OCI type. Okay, that makes sense. And then the third question, which Joe had brought up, was whether we should be speccing a builder TAML as well. I was at first like that. We seem to use that in Pack as a kind of artifact and just how to construct a builder. But I was wondering whether people thought whether I don't think KPack uses a similar thing.
That would be that'd be my reluctance. We have our own format for constructing the builder.
I think it's a pack specific UX.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the bigger question around it is like, if we want to spec the life cycle of a builder, like how it's created and that kind of stuff. But I did not feel very strongly about that.
I think the question of whether the builder TOML file goes into the spec and is thus versioned along with the specification is maybe a different question from should the builder TOML file be a versioned file, right? As Buildpack TOML is. I think that's maybe a different question. I'm not sure what the answer to that is though. Doesn't matter that much at this point.
Yeah, it's fine. And this can definitely move forward without an answer to that.
Great. Fantastic feedback for bringing this up further.
Thanks for putting all it together. Excited. Anything else on that? Or should we move on to asset caching? Got 5 minutes left. The asset caching conversation, I'll mention the pushback, but then let's actually use most of the rest of the time for the next one on the list, because we don't have the people here who feel strongly about this most. But having one big release image that has all your dependencies in it is really hard when you're releasing 12 different build packages at the same time, because you have to keep that thing up to date with just the right, or like with many versions of all the dependencies. It actually makes the release problem much harder. So for asset caching, we need separate asset cache images for every single image. It gets really complicated. And so having the separate image method, there was some strong feedback that they would introduce a lot of complexity in other places that were unexpected. So that's the general feedback. When we get folks from the kind of team that handles that release process on our side in here who have those stronger opinions, we can chat about it separately. But I just wanted to mention what that was. I'm not very opinionated either way. I just want to get to a resolution.
I'd be interested to hear what the workflow problems are in particular. Because the image itself, in some ways I think about it as, well, you really just have a bunch of, the layers are basically blobs that are the artifacts. An image is just the lookup mechanism for them.
It's around distribution where it gets tricky.
Sort of like offline distribution of the layers.
Or relocation, things like that. How does that work? How do you keep everything in sync? They had some very good points. I don't want to try to represent that worse than they could. So let's defer that to the next thing, and then if that's okay, and then we can talk about mirroring proxy images in Pack.
Yeah, so this is an issue that was brought up by an enterprise user. So in this enterprise setting, they either have an Artifactory or a Nexus proxy that essentially takes any request from any registry and essentially like aggregates different registries so that you could just point to one, and then it automatically caches them and does a whole bunch of scanning and other stuff. So in an enterprise setting, this is very common, I guess you could say, for all sorts of dependencies. So image, OCI images being that a dependency kind of falls into that same bucket of a use case. So the request that they had was ultimately, in a simplified fashion, to just replace the host of the image name with that of their specific registry or artifact store, so that then it itself can then retrieve the images for you.
Which image?
This would be for all images.
So I feel like we have a mechanism for
Run
doing
image.
this for run images. And for the app image, you can name it whatever you want, right? So it seems like builders are the sticking point here.
There's
I think-
lifecycle images, builder
I-
images.
I think this feature request is maybe, let's take a step back. I think this is talking about proper Docker registry proxies, right? Like the feature that's in a Docker registry where you, and the weird thing about that feature is that it requires client-side support. The client, because the name is going to be different when it pulls through, you have to tell the client, if I remember, that you're talking to this registry through a registry proxy, and that the ask here is probably, yes, it is translating all names, but it's translating all names in a way that's built into how the Docker client works. And so this may be that something that either works already and we just don't know how to, it's like that you can use Docker environment variables to configure and that might just work already in Pack, but I kind of doubt it because of the way we use GGCR, and I don't know if GGCR is picking up on those same proxy settings the same way, or it may just be a setting that we need to expose in GGCR in addition to the Docker daemon one. But this is like it's a common Docker feature that lots of Docker tooling has to support because it's, if we don't support it in Pack, we should. But I don't think it requires things like rewriting a run image in our image definitions or run image mirrors or anything like that. It's a much lower level kind of rewriting of which registry you're talking to and your host name. You don't actually change the host name part. You just talk to a different registry with the same host name.
I agree that this feature exists. I believe I looked into this a little bit. And you're right, it wouldn't work from GGCR's perspective, which I think is where it comes by. And I'm not entirely sure if it's really the Docker daemon that's taking care of this. I'm assuming it probably would have this feature enabled. But I don't, I think there could be a little bit more research, but I'm not hopeful that that underlying feature is the exact same feature that we're looking for here, if that makes sense.
You don't think that's what the customer is using?
No, I don't think that that's what it's going to solve. I know it is a proper Docker proxy, right? But I don't think that the solution that I guess the Docker CLI or Docker for Mac will be the solution that works for Pack, right? Like we're going to need to do some sort of work in order to make it function.
I guess I'm saying, do we know for sure that GGCR doesn't have the feature built in to support that proxying? Because GGCR has been around for a long time. It's like pretty mature at this point. I'd be really surprised if it didn't also have it. And then once GGCR has that feature, then are we covered? I don't know the answers to these things. It's the first place I'd look before we start, looking at additional interesting ways of doing mirroring. Is like, let's just solve the low level problem the way Docker solves it, if it's possible to do that.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'll definitely take a look deeper into that. So going with the assumption, well, I think we're over time anyway, but I'll look at that and see if I have to bring it back up here again.
Sounds great. I'll take a look at GGCR too and see if I see anything.
I'm looking now. I haven't
very
found
curious.
it yet, but
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. This is great.